star some questions if you want. I may or may not have, forgotten that, like once I hit live, even though there's music playing, like if I talk, people can hear me. So it's Monday. It's been, we've had a lot more going on here recently. Welcome to the show, IB Nation Sports Talk. We're up and rolling along with Vince DeDario. Yes, I'm Sean Stires, who talks over the intro music.
That's good.
But hey, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, it's all good.
Vince, you're already getting the news of your new job has reached Canada.
Yeah.
It appears.
Yes, it has. Thank you.
Congrats on your new. Do you want to get that out of the way before we get going? Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah. No.
Okay.
Definitely. So I just today officially accepted a new position. Obviously, my day job. Everybody knows that I am a teacher and a baseball coach over at Riley High School in South Bend. But as of today, I am going to be the dean of students at a different high school in a different corporation. It is Pyne High School, which is where my kids go. So that's kind of the basis for that. So I get to be in the same corporation as my family, and but also, and the saddest part of this whole thing is that I have to step down as the head baseball coach. At Riley. That's the toughest part. And I was already turning the screws on Sean to come help me out, next season. Yep. And now all that is up in smoke. So he's probably happy.
Into the ring.
He's probably happy that now I'm not going to bother him about it. But no, it's bittersweet. It's something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. And I'm out of the classroom now and kind of in an administrative role, which is a whole new ball of wax. So that'll be fun. So today I officially accepted the position and resigned at my old position and set up my new office and the whole thing. So pretty excited, but nothing changes my dedication to Irish Breakdown.
Nothing changes here.
I want to make sure people understand that. Not going anywhere there. So really excited about everything that kind of goes along with everything. So
yeah. Well, congratulations once again. We've talked about, a little bit about it ourselves off the air. My only disappointment is it also means we can't do high school football together on Fridays anymore because you'll have other duties out there.
Yes.
So
I
maybe you can just make sure that next year when, the backyard brawl is renewed,
yes,
we can work together to make sure we have a good connection.
Absolutely.
For me and whoever's doing the games with me.
Yeah, no doubt. My son, was in the student section a bunch last year, and one of the people in my position has to stand like in or in front of the student section and kind of keep everything under control. And he's like, Dad, don't be that guy. I'm like, okay.
Stay away, Dad. At least for 2 more years.
Yeah.
3, I guess, at this point, right?
He's like, don't be that guy. So, yeah.
All right. Couple things up front. The friendly, always reminder, smash the like button, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all that good stuff, regardless of what platform that you listen or watch. Notre Dame has had 4 practices over the last 4 days. We've been to 3 of them, Vince and I. So for the YouTube live watchers, if you have specific practice questions, hit us up. We're going to do our best to answer them in today's show. Whether it's the first segment, we might use them in rapid fire, just kind of depending on how things go. We'll keep an eye on things, and we will do our best to get to those because I'm sure that you have a lot of questions. We have some observations. We're going to be talking about quarterbacks today. We're going to be talking about some other players that we've seen out there so far, because what today is, we're in here talking about practice. I mean, listen, we're talking about practice, not a game. We're talking about practice, not a game. Not the game that you and I, Vince, would go out there and die to play every game like it's our last. Not the game.
Not the game.
Today, Vince, we're talking about practice, man. So here we are. We're talking about practice. Again, we have been there we've had 3 media availabilities. First one was a full practice.
Yes.
Last 2 have been the first 5 periods, and there's a big difference in what you get in a full practice compared to the first 5 periods. I was telling some, a couple, you I think included, it would just be beautiful if they're going to give us 5 periods, how about you just give us the last 5 periods of practice when something's going on? I realize that's probably the stuff they don't want us to see, but
Right.
like, because there's also, we get done, practice starts 9:30, we're out of there by about 10:15, and then we come back to do interviews with the coaches and players and stuff like that at noon. So there's a gap of about an hour and a half where about a half dozen or so of us were over at Martin's Side Door Deli, cranking
All right.
some stuff out in the in-between session. So we were doing that. But do you want to just start with quarterbacks? I know
That's what everybody wants to know about,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we might as well. And there's some questions that I've starred over there. If you want to go to the starred category, Sean, you can pull those up as we talk.
Okay.
Because there's some about quarterbacks. We might as well get those out of the way right now since we're talking about quarterbacks. But I tell you what, I would say when it comes to the quarterbacks, I have seen pretty much what I anticipated that I would see, Sean. I mean, obviously nothing has been announced, and this is Vince talking. This is not Notre Dame football talking. This is not Marcus Freeman or Tommy Rees talking. This is me talking. But it's pretty clear who QB1 is, who QB2 is, and who QB3 is. I mean, there's and 4 for that matter. Somebody was asking about Ron Paulus III and where he stands and all of that. Look, it is very.
I think when it comes to quarterbacks, not to cut you off, when it comes to quarterbacks, everyone kind of has their pet guy.
Absolutely,
this guy, that kind of thing. And I've got
absolutely.
It's probably like that at any position, quarterback being the one at the top. But again, the full practice is where you could really see how the reps were being divvied up. In the 2 5-period practices, it's more the quarterbacks are still just going through warm-ups, but they also go in order of who's the guy to number 4. And it always goes 12, 10, 18, 11. The numbers of the quarterbacks. If you don't know, if you don't have your roster handy, that's Tyler Buchner, followed by Drew Pyne, followed by Steve Angeli, followed by Ron Paulus III. That is the pecking order. It has been consistent so far at the 3 practices we've been to.
Yeah, again, not at all it is exactly what I expected to see. It's not at all surprising, basically. The only thing that would surprise me, I suppose, at this point is if they were, everything was even and, everybody got a third of the reps and, all of that kind of thing. And again, I'm not discounting Ronnie Paulus III, but he's not part of the quarterback competition. Okay, he is officially the guy who's going to signal in plays. And when you have that job, you really have no chance of starting, okay? And he's 4th on the depth chart, but he has his role. And nothing wrong with that. So he is the signaler. He's the signal guy of the Red Army, and that's great for him. It's a great that's an important role, to be honest. Look, he gets to go on all the trips. Most people 4th on the depth chart aren't going on the trips. So
good point.
Good for him. Like, that's great. So so that's his role. And to be honest, Steve Angeli isn't really a part of the quarterback competition either. I mean, he's taken 3rd-team reps, and 3rd-team, I would say, and I think I said this the other day, it's about 10% of the total reps is the 3rd team. I mean,
and it's with the 3rd team. We should also say that based on the reps we saw in the full practice, Tyler Buchner probably got more than 95% of the snaps with the 1st team.
Yes.
Pyne, 95+% of his reps were with the 2nd team. Then again, Steve Angeli and down the line, and the reps. Angeli was not getting a lot. The 3rd team was not getting a lot of reps at practice. Understandably, even though it's early in fall camp, you're going to give the bulk of the reps to 1st and 2nd team guys. And we were watching them run red zone plays, and Buchner throws his pass or two, Pyne throws his pass or two. And then Steve Angeli handed off to the running back, and they, it was that kind of thing. So it's like, there was not, comparable, what they were doing out there and that kind of thing. I think they view it as you've got a really dynamic up and comer in Tyler Buchner, a different gear, a different element that Drew Pyne does not give you. Pyne they might even have almost the same amount of experience. I guess Pyne has a little bit more because he played in a handful more games as a true freshman. But again, it was like a snap here, snap there.
Right. It was
That
mop
kind of
up
thing.
type stuff.
At least Pyne has more experience, I guess, running a full offense than Tyler Buchner has. But at the same time, it's just what we've seen so far, what the pecking order is. It's pretty obvious right now, sort of how things are viewed.
Yes, no question. So. And again, like you mentioned, Drew Pyne was the official second string quarterback last year. He was getting the second team reps during practice. He was the second team quarterback. Tyler Buchner was the third team quarterback with a package. So he was able to run his package in practice, but he wasn't running the full offense. That was never what he was asked to do. And so in games, when they would ask him to do some things that were outside of his package and things like that, he didn't do very well. Well, that's what happens when you don't practice it, So I'm not saying I give him a complete pass for some of the things that he did, specifically the Georgia Tech or the Virginia Tech game. But at the same time, we can't anticipate and expect him to be really good at something he doesn't practice. Okay. He's been practicing as QB1 all spring, all fall up to this point, So he is, absorbing the playbook, and it's very obvious. And there's a different dynamic when he's behind center than when Drew Pyne is behind center. It's a different offense. It's a more dynamic offense, period. So, take that for what it's worth. I know there's a lot of Drew Pyne people out there, and somebody said in the chat the other day, or maybe it was on the message board, that, mark my words, Drew Pyne's going to be leading the team out, again in the horseshoe, and that's the only chance Notre Dame has to win. You're entitled to your opinion, and that's fantastic. But that's not going to happen unless there is a massive injury to Tyler Buchner, in my opinion. I would agree with that
as well. As of right now, I would totally agree with that as well. And even just like listening to Tommy Rees and the quarterback, like the quarterbacks are obviously talking about what they're doing to try to put themselves in the best position and things like that. But even the conversation doesn't sound like the typical, here's what this guy has to do. Here's what this guy has to do. All those kind of things that you hear. It's just the conversation. I'm not saying it's a foregone conclusion, but the things that you hear don't sound like that so far.
Right.
Kyle N asks, "Hey guys, are you concerned about Tyler's release point? He had a lot of mistakes last year with throws over wide receivers' heads. In the camp clips, I can see that low arm angle and the nose of the football up." I'll just say, he's been pretty accurate from what I've seen so far. Whether it's versus air, one-on-one with defenders out there, 11-on-11, I have not seen it be an issue. And like we talked about this, this obviously became a big thing with Brandon Wimbush a few years ago.
Sure.
To an extent, maybe it was going to become a thing with Phil Jerkovic, like the arm angle and the mechanics, how much do you correct and all that stuff, like look at Phillip Rivers in the career that he had. That was not an optical, like what you would call an optimal arm angle. I think that, you're better off if he can get it from point A to point B. It doesn't matter what it looks like, what the arm angle looks like or any of that. I definitely think, especially at this point in the game in training camp, you don't want to be messing with that stuff. So
no,
your
I
overall
agree.
Thoughts on arm angle and that kind of thing, what you've seen and everything else, Vince.
Well, look, there's a prototypical, what people think a quarterback's arm slot and, the angles and all of those things should look like, right? And to be honest with you, CJ Carr kind of looks like that. I mean, he's kind of got that prototypical high, standing up straight throw and all of these different things. And he throws the ball like a classic quarterback would throw the ball. Does a great job, super accurate, all of those things. Yes, Tyler Buchner drops the arm angle a little bit compared to other guys, but he's accurate. And so I don't care as much, right? We have seen what happens when coaches try to tinker with guys' throwing motions. Look, Tyler Buchner was a borderline 5-star recruit in high school for a reason, because he was super productive. He did a great job. He was accurate. He's able to pick apart defenses, all of those different things. And then he went to a quarterback's coach his senior year when he wasn't playing, and he tried to change his arm angle and all of that different stuff. And he didn't look very good. When he went to the Elite 11, he didn't look very good. Now he's kind of back to what he was doing when he was in high school, and I feel like he's actually gotten more accurate.
And it comes down to, if you start tinkering with mechanics, especially when the season is going on,
Absolutely.
you what happens to the quarterback then is, rather than reading a defense, going through his progressions, doing the things that he's supposed to be seeing, he's thinking about, is my arm angle right? And like, you can compare this a little bit. One thing Drew Pyne did talk about the other day, was watching a lot of film. He's basically buried himself in the film room, and he's
Right.
he's done a lot of that, so that when you get on the field, you've essentially gone through all those situations, and you're not seeing it for the first time, and it's basically just see it and react, so that you're not thinking about it. And he said, if you have to think about it on the field, then you lose a second, and then in a second, or in a football game, a second is a long time. And it's the same with your mechanics, whether it's football, throwing the football, or a baseball player working on the mechanics of your swing over the like, if you're trying to correct a loop, or whatever it happens to be, you're leaking, whatever it is. If you're trying to do that in the course of the season, so that, like, you're spending these reps here during the week trying to correct mechanics, then you get to game day on Saturday. Right. What's going to happen is you're just going to revert to whatever your muscle memory is.
Exactly.
And all that work that you just did is going to go out the window. But, kind of what you were saying, if you're going to do it, it needs to be in the off season, where you've got thousands of, hours and repetitions that you can get in. Now is not the time to be thinking about that.
Absolutely.
Now it's just, this is what it is. And now, can we win with that? Can he, does he give us the best chance to win with whatever it is he's got, mechanics and otherwise?
And to be honest with you, yeah, he changes his arm slot. And that's one of the things, in my opinion, that made his high school film so awesome, was that he kind of had that. And somebody actually mentioned Patrick Mahomes. He kind of had a little bit of that to him. He can kind of change his arm slot. He can get the ball out and all of these different things. Look, Tyler Buchner's going to be on the run at times, right? And he's almost at his best when he is on the run. Now, he can throw from the pocket. He does a really good job at it. But when they're doing drills where they're moving around and they're using their feet and all of these different things, he's, in my opinion, very accurate at that time. The most accurate of all of the quarterbacks at Notre Dame at the moment. And so I want that. That's what I want. I want that dynamic possibility while he's on the run, to keep his eyes downfield, because not last year, but the 3 years before that, that wasn't the case. As soon as the scramble began, it was, I'm running. That's it. I'm not looking, that's it. Tyler is the opposite. When he gets out, he's looking to throw the ball. He's not looking to run the ball, but he can. He's dynamic with his legs, obviously, but he's looking to throw the ball. He does a really good job of that, going through his progressions, all of those different things. I've been very impressed with Tyler Buchner. People just need to relax and be excited about the fact that you've got a dynamic kid behind center.
What do you think about his footwork? Brian wants to know.
He is by far the most agile, the best with his footwork of the four quarterbacks. It's not close. You would never have been able to tell that he twisted his ankle. I still contend that if that exact same injury occurred during the fall and there was an actual game that Saturday, he would have played. I fully believe that. They held him out because it didn't matter. It was a practice. And if they would have held him out on a Wednesday afternoon, you hold him out of the spring game. It's a practice. It doesn't matter. And so, yeah, I think that was a minor thing. It was just bad timing. And the rumor mills just went crazy with that. And it was
absolutely
unfortunate, but, it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There's been nothing that I've seen that has been, like, what we have not seen is a guy who throws the ball into the ground at one moment and then sails one over somebody's head the next moment. Like there have been a couple times, where, it might not be right on the money, but, like, if we're talking about the accuracy things, it's been Drew Pyne who's been a little bit more of that. I have seen him, sail, a couple, again.
Remember, he hopped one. It was like a screen pass. And he hopped it to him. Look, that happens. It happens all the time. I was talking to Brian about it. He's like, yeah, first day of fall camp, you hop one over there. Yeah, that happens. So it's not something I'm freaking out about, but he's the one that hops.
That's the thing. Like, if we look at Colin Park's question as well, how much 11 on 11 have you gotten to watch, and how have the quarterbacks looked in it? The only 11 on 11 we got to see was, the full practice, the first day, because again, these last two practices, Saturday and this morning, that we got to see, they were the first 5 periods. And, starts off with warm-ups. That's not one of the periods necessarily, but then what they have done predominantly, there's been a little special team stuff mixed in, but they have also, just gone and done position drills. And for the quarterbacks, it's mostly, just doing some light throwing, to kind of start to, to loosen their arms up. And then also today they were doing, like some read option type stuff, handing off to running backs, just practicing the mesh and that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
all of the 11 on 11 we got to see was Friday in the first full practice.
And it wasn't full contact, obviously, because they were just helmets.
They're still in shells.
Nobody's going to the ground and all of that different stuff. And so, you're not getting the full look up front that you would normally get. It was basically the 11 on 11. And, oh, by the way, why don't the linemen just get involved too?
And we should also mention, maybe for the people who haven't listened to, either Brian or read the intel, like if you've kind of flown blind through this so far, you haven't read or listened to a lot of stuff. What they're doing this year, and this came from Al Golden's NFL background, is the offense is starting out in the red zone, rather than let's start off at our own 15 or 20 yard line and do a 2-minute drill down. They did a little bit of that. It seemed like maybe they started closer to midfield when they did that, but they're starting in the red zone so that the defensive backs and wide receivers, the skill position players, aren't doing quite as much running early on to kind of build them up a little bit, save their legs a little bit, build them up and that kind of thing. So almost all the offense that we've seen live has been in the red zone, and
which is great. I think, number one, I like the reasoning that you just gave on why they're doing it. I think that's really smart, but it's also a stat that wasn't very good last year, to be honest with you. Their red zone efficiency was not very good offensively. And so I'm happy that that's something that they're focused on early and often, because I'll tell you what, the red zone offense looks really good with Tyler Buchner. I love the threat of him and the design runs and the things that they've kind of been working on. And he just adds a whole other dimension. He just does. And it's dynamic. It's awesome. And it's going to be really, really effective. So it's been nice to see the red zone, because that's an area that I'm not concerned with necessarily moving forward, but it's an area they had to improve. And so they've clearly done some self-scouting and realized, and I know for a fact that they are, the red zone is on their radar, that it's something that they want to be good at. And so that's really good to see that that's the emphasis early on for multitude of reasons. But yeah.
Well, the other thing is, like, again, this is just what we got to see on Friday. Tyler, one of the things Marcus Freeman said after Friday's practice is, we know the guy can run.
Yeah.
We need him throwing the ball right now. And it was a little bit like Phil Jerkovic in the blue gold game a couple of years ago. Remember when Phil was so ticked off that he couldn't, run the full offense, and he wasn't allowed to run.
Yeah.
He had to stay in the pocket. There was some more of that with Tyler Buchner the other day, where they want him, they don't want him just taking off at the first opportunity. They want him to continue going through those reads and progressions and trying to do that first, so there was, a little bit of that with him. We did see Drew Pyne throw an interception. It was tipped, and then it was intercepted in the end zone. It was tipped around the 5, between the 5 and 10, and intercepted in the end zone. He did make probably the highlight play of the day on a scramble that he had coming out of the pocket. The ball was on the left hash mark. He got out, he sprinted out to his right, and he threw a low dart that Braden Lindsay went down and made a
great catch.
Nice, diving grab. That was, again, that was probably the highlight play of the day. But there were also, some inconsistencies Drew had just with, what you were talking about, bounce the ball in there and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and again, there was one play I remember where Tyler kind of escaped the pocket to the left, and I felt like he could have run and gotten some
taken
yards,
off if he wanted to,
but he threw it into kind of double coverage. Remember that one? And it was like, well, it's not the greatest decision. Or no, he threw it away. I'm sorry. He threw it up and over, and it hit the back fence.
Back corner of the end zone.
Yep.
That's right.
That's what it was. When I think in a game, he probably tucks that and goes, because there was nobody.
There was a lot of green in front of him. Yeah,
there was.
Exactly.
He might not have scored but he definitely would have gotten positive yards. So yeah, I agree with you on that one. But like they were also doing designed runs for him that were just, I mean, unfair. Frankly, I mean, they were unfair.
All right, we do have the Steve Angeli question from Tom. Hey, fellas, is Steve Angeli playing well? I mean, he's not playing poorly.
No.
He's just not getting a lot of snaps right now.
Right.
Because as we started off talking about the quarterbacks, it's predominantly Tyler Buchner and Drew Pyne, and then Angeli kind of gets a handful. It's not a competition between Buchner, Pyne, and Angeli and or Paulus. It is
right.
It is Buchner and Pyne at the
correct.
top.
No question. And that's a competition for sure. Yeah, I don't know that it's like I said. I think you and I both know, or we feel like we know who's going to win that competition. But it's those two.
Right.
Absolutely. The other two guys they're getting mental reps during practice more often than anything else, and that comes from what they were able to do during the spring, and it comes from what they were able to do during the summer. And the coaches know that that is what it is, and that they're gonna ride with those two guys. And I think that's the right decision, to be honest with you. There's only so many reps that you can give out in a 2-hour practice, right? And you have to focus on the guys that are most likely going to play. If there's an injury or something, well, then you cross that bridge when you come to it. But you can't equally prepare 3 or 4 guys at any position, frankly.
Right.
At quarterback especially.
No, that's exactly right. Even though it is training camp, you are still in training camp to get ready for the season.
And that's another another thing we didn't really bring up is they were using crowd noise in the first practice.
Yeah, that's right.
The fall camp, and that was very interesting. I've been to a lot of open practices at Notre Dame, and I have never once heard them use crowd noise. And I mean, they're starting on day one using crowd noise. I think that was really, really smart. And you can tell they're just getting these guys conditioned and getting them ready to go, because it's going to be a hostile environment and all of that. And I love that. I love it.
Yep. Brian J. Irish says, I think Tyler Buchner play this year going to make some people move on from Phil. And, obviously we could see a head-to-head matchup in November between those guys. But I think you're right. I think that people are good. Just again, we haven't seen a ton of Tyler Buchner live, but I think people are going to like what they see from Tyler Buchner.
I agree.
I don't think you're going to be disappointed.
Completely agree.
Yeah. All right. Some other kind of little notes. Prince Collie was in T-shirt and shorts. Now, you were over by the linebackers today.
Yes.
I was over by the offense and the quarterbacks. And so you kind of tell everyone what you saw, and then I'll say what Al Golden had to say in the media session afterwards.
So basically, when they were doing their FSA, which is their dynamic stretching at the beginning, you and I were actually looking for Prince Collie because for something else that you're working on. We were looking, where's white number 10? Where's Prince Collie at? And we couldn't find him. And then when they split up, there was one guy that was with the linebackers, but he was in shorts and a T-shirt, and he wasn't actively participating in the drills, but he was like mirroring the drills while they were doing it. And he didn't look like he was hobbled at all. He looked healthy. He had a kind of a water bottle in his hand. He's doing kind of the drills off to the side on his own. Marcus Freeman came over and talked to him for a little while at one point. So it didn't feel like he was injured to me. We kind of, and I don't know what your answer is going to be, but like somebody standing next to me, we kind of, maybe it's concussion protocol, like that kind of a thing. We weren't really sure, but he looked like he was full go to me, but maybe just a precautionary thing. I don't know. So I will throw it to you, sir.
So my answer is not going to be what anyone wants to hear. It's not bad.
Okay.
But Al Golden basically said, I'm going to defer all questions about injuries to Marcus Freeman. So we've got to wait until Saturday.
Oh, brutal.
But we will get to see we will get to see some practice again at the end of the week.
Okay.
But so maybe by then things have changed for Prince Collie. But if not, we'll get to ask Marcus Freeman Saturday.
Gotcha.
So no, there was a question about, has it been reported why he wasn't practicing? No, the question was asked of Al Golden today, and Al said he didn't want to talk about injuries. He's going to let the head coach handle that.
Okay, that's kind of a cop out, but I get it. I get it.
Right. Joe Wilkins also riding on a
Mm.
stationary bike today. Jaden Thomas was riding on a stationary bike Saturday, but he was back out on the field with the team today, and doing everything that everybody else was doing with the receivers group and all that stuff. So, things looking good along those lines. We've seen kind of a little rotation over in the corner where the rehabbing guys work with the trainer and all that stuff. It's been a few receivers, but Joe Wilkins was doing some sprints of his own. Like he was on the bike and then the trainer would have him do kind of a down and back across the field down there in the end zone in that corner of the field.
Yeah, he was running the width of the field in the end zone. And he was working with Mike Hunt.
Yes, the width. Thank you.
The head athletic trainer for football. And so he was getting kind of some one-on-one work. And, he's always in full pads, which is always very interesting over there, riding the bike and doing different things. So,
true.
If I'm speculating, I would say that he's closer to coming back than not coming back. But I don't think they're in any rush to get him back on the field. You know what I mean? Because the beginning of camp is more along the lines of mental reps and getting yourself down and getting the playbook down and all those different things. He's been in the program for a long time. And so that part isn't an issue. And he's definitely working his butt off over there in the corner, riding the bike and doing all the different things that they're doing. So he's getting work in, he's doing his thing, and I'm sure they'll bring him back whenever he's ready. But I would hope that he's going to be back soon. That would be fantastic.
Yep. Again, YouTube viewers, if you want to hit us up with some questions that you have regarding practice, you can throw them up there in the chat right now. If we don't get to them in this segment, we will still get some in rapid fire as well. We've got a few kind of standing by right now. I wanted to make sure that we hit some of these guys, the quarterbacks being the biggest one, like you said, that's what everyone's talking about. But how about that number 15 for the offense, Tobias Merriweather? He's looked good so far.
Smooth, Sean Stires. Smooth. I mean,
yes.
You and I were sitting next to each other, and they were going through drills like right in front of us. And he was last, and he's because he's a freshman, and he was moving the dummies around because he's a freshman. But then they started running the drills, and he's just different. He's just different than everybody else. And then that's not saying that the other guys aren't good, because they really are. I mean, Styles and Lindsey and all of those guys are gonna do great this year. But Tobias Merriweather doesn't look like a true freshman. Okay. Now, could he put a little bit more meat on his bones at some point? Of course. But he's just so long, he's so athletic, his feet are so good. I mean, this is the first time that I've been able to see him in person, and he did not disappoint at all. That was a joy to watch. Let's put it that way. Now, I will also say that because he is a true freshman, he's running with a third team. He's running with the other true freshmen, Holden Stays, Steve Angeli, all of those guys. Those are the guys that he's running with right now, because they're still, playing catch up and doing all of that. And that's totally fine. But man, in the individual stuff with the receivers, he stands out. You notice him right away.
Yeah. And, all the things you said, and he's also got explosiveness coming out of those cuts and out of his breaks that you love to see. Now, there's still, obviously, because he's a freshman and because he wasn't an early enrollee, so, he's only been on campus for the summer so far. There's still some room for this guy to fill out a little bit more, to pack a little bit of muscle on his frame. But, to hear Tommy Rees talk about him, it's really about, they really like the way he got into the playbook over the summer, the way he jumped in right away, the way he was able to absorb things. And it's really all about kind of the finer points, just a guy who's coming out of high school, who's still a little bit raw right now, just like today in the first couple drills they were doing like some short passing stuff. The receiver would catch a ball and he had a defensive back trailing him, just some short passes from the quarterbacks. And like Tobias Merriweather, and again, this is for the YouTube viewers who can see, he secured the ball up here against his chest. And Chancey Stuckey said, no, not up here. It's here. So you've got your arm kind of, more at this angle right here. And, so like just little things like that, just all those little things. And, I think that there is a ton of upside. And I was maybe, again, because of the freshman history, the wide receivers and all that stuff, we were talking about it last week. I was probably a lot more skeptical than you, but he's opened my eyes so far.
Yeah.
The first few times we've got to see him over there.
Absolutely. And the roadblocks to the freshman getting on the field are both gone. One's at Georgia Tech and one's at LSU. And so not only are they almost forced to get him on the field or forced to get him in the rotation because of the numbers, because they kind of are, but Chancey Stuckey's coaching him up, and it is very clear that he's coaching him up and he's getting him ready. And they're, if you look at all things equal, right, and you just take away the FR in front of his name, he deserves to play. He's going to play. I mean, he's going to force himself onto the field, and any wide receiver room that has him in it and he doesn't play, they're doing something wrong. Period.
I mean, he's got to be. He's definitely top 5 among the receivers right now.
Absolutely.
I think there's a strong case that, and I think there's a strong case that he's, maybe even, sitting in 3 or 4, just depending on what day it is. Like if we got to see, more full stuff, he might be opening our eyes even more. Or, the other side, maybe we see more inconsistencies that we haven't seen so far because he is a freshman. But that's kind of what we only get one more full practice. That's the one I'm waiting for now at this point.
And that's not for a while.
It's like, let me see. I've got my calendar.
It's Friday, but it's not this Friday. It's next Friday. So almost 2 weeks.
Oh, yes, of course. It's the day of the, our first high school football broadcast. So
of course.
Not here that Irish Breakdown has to worry about, but I'll be dealing with that.
Yes, you will.
Yes. Logan Diggs, he's been wearing the red jersey, the only quarterback not wearing the red jersey, and Chancey Stuckey's hoodie asks, Logan Diggs wearing a red jersey but doesn't seem to shy away from contact. Is he farther along in your eyes? And I would say yes. And I'm going to hide that for just a second. And I would also say that in that very first press conference, Marcus Freeman not only left the door open, but seemed to strongly indicate that, barring some setback from where Diggs is right now, he's going to play against Ohio State.
Which I think we're all surprised about, but happily surprised, because I think he's looked really good in the opportunities that he's had when they're running, team, and obviously when they're running individual, he looks good. I mean, his legs weren't the issue. His legs weren't injured. So he looked good. He's not afraid to take a hit, obviously, or deliver a hit. He kind of had to be told after that, like, hey, you might want to just settle down just a little bit. You're not quite ready. You are wearing a red jersey for a reason. But the coaching staff put him in that position. So
he's wearing, it's his left shoulder that's injured, and he's wearing one of those black neoprene, brace supports underneath, and it comes down, and his upper arm, so you can see that kind of, coming out of his jersey. Well, so he runs the ball up the middle, and again, they're not in full pads. It's not full tackle. Right. He throws his right shoulder, the other shoulder, right into the chest of a defensive back.
Yes.
Who was coming downhill trying to make a play on him. So, at least he threw the correct shoulder into the defensive back, and he's but he's also not shying away from it now. He looks like a guy who is itching to get back to it, and I'm sure that they're probably having to, kind of reel him in a little bit when he's out there at practice.
Now.
And it's a really encouraging sign, unless he could be his own worst enemy at this point.
And it's if you tell me that Notre Dame has a game in a little less than a month, I'm telling you, from what I've seen in practice, he looks like he'll be ready to go. I really do believe that. And I'm surprised, because originally it was October, then it was late September, and now it's for the opener. And the issues everybody had with depth at running back is that is going away, frankly, because now you're going to have 4 healthy scholarship running backs, and that's where you want to be. That's absolutely where you want to be, and it allows Jabron Pyne to come along at a bit of a slower pace, because I don't think he's quite there physically all the way yet, and the other 3 guys definitely are. So, I mean, it's a good sign. It's a really, really good sign, and they're going to, parse out his production and all of that stuff. But when you have more guys to do that with, the better off you're going to be.
We've got our own questions that we're going to get to in rapid fire, and we have more listener questions we'll get to in rapid fire. Let's wrap this part up, though. Eli Raridan, the freshman tight end. Again, this is another guy who you were pretty high on, and 6'6", and wearing that number 9.
Yeah, baby.
He stands out there, and it's not just because of the shape of his body. I think this is another freshman. Again, I think we were talking about it last week that maybe this is a guy who can come in and contribute, especially when you look at the numbers at receiver and what you need to do to give yourself some viable receiving options. I like the guy. I like the way this guy moves, and his size as well just makes him so unique, in terms of, like what Tyler Buchner can do. This is a guy who is going to be easy to find for Tyler Buchner. And I think he can also, kind of help, kind of tandem up with Michael Mayer out there.
Yeah. And I think he's super athletic. He can catch the football. Obviously he is. And look, one of the things that we've been talking about for a really long time is, look, Notre Dame runs a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets, but they just never use that second and third tight end as passing threats.
Yeah.
And, they've got guys that can be passing threats, and he is definitely one of those guys. And you want to talk about healing fast. Holy smokes. I mean, he tore up his knee this calendar year. It wasn't it in like January or something along those lines. It was during basketball season. I know that much. And so he's already back. He's not wearing a red jersey. He's full go as far as I can tell, and everything that he's doing in practice. The kid looks really, really good. And we talked before his injury that he would have a chance at playing time, this season as a true freshman. I don't think that prediction has changed a whole lot. I think he's got ample opportunity to be a guy that can be counted on for sure.
Yeah, I agree. He stood out on day one, especially. And, again, like when you've got 2 freshmen like Meriwether and Raridan standing out on day one of fall training camp, that says a lot about who they are and what, what they have that they're able to stand out like that. Because, not everyone's going to be Kyle Hamilton and come in and pick off 8 practices, like in the first week as a true freshman. Obviously they're offensive players, but they have both looked good so far. Okay, Vince, rapid fire time. And again, we'll mix in some more listener questions, and we've got some of our own, starting with the preseason college football coaches poll released today. Here is how it looks. You've got Alabama at number 1, no shock. They received 54 first-place votes. Number 2, the September 3rd opponent, Ohio State, who received 5 first-place votes. Defending national champ Georgia is 3rd with 6 first-place votes. Those are the only 3 teams that got first-place votes. Clemson is 4th, Notre Dame 5th, followed by Michigan, Texas A&M, Utah, Oklahoma. Baylor is 10th, and then Oklahoma State and Oregon. So that's the top 12. Anything really surprise you in any of that?
Well, obviously, I go straight to Notre Dame to find out where they're ranked, right? And if I was doing a top 10, I think I would have Notre Dame at 5. I think that's actually very appropriate because they have, I think they have a really good roster coming back. There's some question marks that national people probably cannot answer, and I totally understand that. But there are going to be questions that are going to be answered fairly quickly for Notre Dame. I mean, obviously, quarterback, head coach, defensive coordinator, all of those different things, right? And so I wouldn't put them above Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama because I still think that those guys are still in that kind of tier 1 range, and they belong there. And until Notre Dame can prove that they belong there, those guys belong ahead of them in the preseason. I have no problem with that whatsoever. There was a couple of other ones that I was looking at. Let's see. It's right here, actually, in Lindy's, their preseason poll, right? They have Notre Dame 8, and they have A&M, Michigan, and Utah ahead of Notre Dame.
All ahead of them.
Sorry, that's a hard pass for me. I don't see that being the case. So, and again, it's preseason. It doesn't necessarily matter. If you're in the top 10, you've got every opportunity to be in the Final Four when it's all said and done. You have to be positioned at least nearby in order to climb that high, right? So top 10, you're good to go. So you're kind of splitting hairs a little bit, but I think they're absolute perfect, in my opinion, in this poll at 5 and having the 4 most recent national champions, frankly, above them. I have no problem.
Yeah. I think, I think it's the appropriate spot. I agree. I think they're clearly better than Michigan. Maybe I'm just surprised a little bit because it's the coaches poll, because on the one hand, I think a lot of coaches, they probably go back and look at the final poll from last year and
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And some of the most familiar names, they don't have to work too hard to figure. I do think based on other comments that I've read, though, is like a lot of these other coaches are so impressed with the job Marcus Freeman has done with recruiting, even though that doesn't necessarily impact what's going to happen with this year's team. I think that some of that is probably in the minds of some of these coaches. But, again, I agree. I think they need to be ahead of Michigan. I think they need to be ahead of Utah and, all these Big 12 teams as well. But, like with a quarterback and all that, I might have thought that maybe the coaches, might kind of knock them down because there was just enough question. But, they were like, right around 10, 11 going into last season, and they ended up there, in the top 6. So, I think that they're in a good spot. And really, when you look at the rest, not a lot of questions. Obviously, a lot of voters don't know what to do with Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State, since they've got them 1, 2, 3, all out of the Big 12. And one of those teams will probably end up being a top 10 team when it's all said and done. Maybe 2 of them, kind of like last year, come down to the wire. For a chance to maybe sneak into the playoff or something like that. But
I could see that. I have a hard time getting on the Texas A&M bandwagon. I don't really believe in everything that's going on down there, even from an on the field standpoint.
Well, again, like maybe in a year or two that plays out based on their recruiting. But for this
with
year,
the recruiting, it's like I feel like those guys are going to cash their check and head someplace else. Like, I don't know. I don't see them being able to sustain that. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong a lot. Ask my wife; she'll tell you. But it's just hard for me to get on the A&M bandwagon. I will say that Utah impressed down the stretch. I thought the reasons. Remember at the end of last year we were talking about that 12-team playoff, and who it would benefit and things like that. Especially looking at last year specifically, I don't think it benefits anybody more than it did Utah. I think Utah could have made a little bit of a run in that top 12 kind of, winner take all kind of thing. Because they were playing very, very well down the stretch, very physical. They showed it against Ohio State. So I have no problem with them being where they are. And, the rest of them, I mean, you kind of said it. Oregon, okay. I mean,
we'll see.
That's fine.
Again,
12
they've got a new head coach too.
Yeah.
So.
And they've got some momentum from the recruiting trail and things like that. So, that's fine. And frankly, the Pac-12 is pretty weak this year. And so I would have them over USC. So I have no problem with that. USC is not in the top 12. I think they were 15th. Is one of what somebody said in the chat. That's about where they belong, and we'll see what happens with them. So I don't really have a problem with the AP top 12. I really don't.
Yeah, Utah last year was one of the few Pac-12 teams who actually, maybe did deserve the under the radar, kind of designation.
Sure.
But, based on the showing that they had against Ohio State, even if Ohio State was, pretty depleted in the Rose Bowl. But all right, let's slip a few of these listener questions in here from our live YouTube chat. And again, you can slip some in. Let's start with this one from Shanty Irishman. Which position group is closest to mid-season form, and which position group needs the most improvement?
Ooh, so positive and negative. It's hard to be in mid-season form on August 8th. I will say that. But the closest to mid-season form, I'll go with the tight ends. I think the tight ends are doing some impressive things, and when you've got a potential All-American leading the way, and you only really need one on the field. I will say that I could see Michael Mayer being a pretty darn good player right now if the season gets started. So I'll go with tight ends for closest to midseason form.
All right. I'm just going to go with defensive line. I've been pretty impressed with what we've seen from those guys so far. Again, the last couple times we've been over there, it's been more drills and in individual stuff. But I like that, well, I'll save this for another question here coming up here in just a second. But I've been pretty impressed with what we have seen. I was standing, I guess it was Saturday, up close, and there are some specimens down there. Chris Brown and Riley Mills, they are the winners of the gun show for that defensive line. They have got the biggest arms. They've got arms the size of, like if you and I, well, I was about to say, we probably have a little bit bigger quads than they have arms, but they've got very large arms. They could walk on those arms. So I'd say my mid-season form goes to defensive line. There's been no noticeable drop off after losing a guy like Mike Elson. Al Washington has come in and has not missed a beat from what we've seen so far.
As far as the most improvement, I'm going to give a cop-out answer, and I apologize, but I'm going to go with the fullbacks because they use the fullback an awful lot during the red zone, and I wasn't all that impressed just yet. I was impressed that they were using them, but they need a little bit of work, and that's not necessarily their fault. They're all walk-ons, frankly. So it's going to take some time, I think, but I like the thinking outside of the box and using the fullback, but I think the whole experiment needs more work. It just needs it. They're not in midseason form yet. They need to polish.
It's funny, not that maybe a lot of people are going to care about this, but the walk-on Justin Fisher, who was an option quarterback here in town at Mishawaka High School. We called all his games over the last 3 years. He is a preferred walk-on over there at Notre Dame. And he was initially listed on the roster as a fullback, but he is working with the tight ends right now. And I mean, he is not a small guy, especially by high school standards, but he wears number 23. Like for a high school quarterback, especially, he was jacked, but he has a hard time keeping up, his own gun show physique when he's standing next to Michael Mayer and some of those guys out there.
That's true. That is very true. He looks like a walk-on, and as a high school player, he barely fit into his jersey. So it's just a very interesting dichotomy of what we're used to seeing on like Friday nights and then what we get to see on Saturdays. It's just a completely different situation. And but he's doing a great job for anybody that cares. He's doing a really good job with what he's doing. It's a lot of fun.
Irish Chi-Town says, Sean and Vince, what differences have you seen between a Coach Freeman and Coach Kelly practice?
Real simple. I just feel like there's more energy, and part of that could just be because there's a new coaching staff and that kind of a thing. But I just feel like there's more buy-in, there's more energy, there's more movement, there's just more going on. They do, again, we've seen one full practice and a couple of partials, but they do this circuit kind of a situation, and it just boom, boom, boom. They're only at each station of the circuit for like 2 minutes tops, and then they're rotating to the next one, and then boom, boom, boom. It just everything is moving. Everything is competition, and it's the energy level is just so high. It wasn't like that in the past. I'm not saying it was bad, but it's different. It is different.
It's different and I agree with everything that you said. And we've already talked about like day one, they had crowd noise out there. So even though they're not necessarily specifically working on Ohio State specific things right now, their very first game, it's going to be a loud, rowdy, environment, night game and the whole thing on the road at the Horseshoe and all that. And they were working with crowd noise, and they typically have some music, not always, but you'll hear them play some music in the background, not loud decibel music, but just so that there is something there, while they're practicing and stuff like that. Now, the other side of that is like, this is kind of what I was referring to a little bit earlier. This is still, one of my concerns with a young first-time head coach. This has been, whatever knocks that you have on Brian Kelly, I probably agree with a lot of them. But the one thing that you cannot deny is the developmental nature of the program under Brian Kelly. And, that's the thing that has sustained this program so much, is the way, they develop the depth chart, and they're able to plug one guy in, to the next from one season to the next. And, there has been a lot of time early on, again, spent on these little things, like position, and like you've got defensive linemen out there, doing agility type stuff, but also, pounding those big heavy bags, working on their rips, coming, off the line, on their pass rush and stuff like that. And, tight ends, they were out there today on the 2-man sled, each blocking with just one arm, like their inside arm, and working on very specific things at all these different positions. And that plays into it as well. And then, there was a question about Steve Angeli being one snap away and that kind of stuff. And, look, again, right now, Steve Angeli is not in the equation for those top 2 spots on the depth chart.
Correct.
He's getting a lot of work in these position groups, though, that we're talking about. That's where, an incoming freshman, not dissimilar to Tyler Buchner last year, by the way, that's where, an incoming freshman quarterback is going to start to hone his skill is in all these individual drills. And, and it's just up to each player, whether he's the quarterback or not, to make the most out of those drills, and that's where he's going to find it right now. If the time comes where Steve Angeli can help him, they'll figure that out. And, maybe we see something along those lines. But, that's, again, the thing that's impressed me has been that there's still a lot of work on development and skill development out there, especially early on. They're spending a lot of time on that early in practice.
Yep. And it's position group to position group too. All about, hey, it's all about technique. It's all about technique. It's all about the fundamentals and all of those different things. And that is very, very good to see, because you're going to see high-level players playing very fundamentally sound. And that combination will win you a lot of ball games.
Yes. From USMA 87, what did you think of the kick return practice? We saw some posted on video today, and also Irish Chi-Town kind of doubling up on that, was asking what the special teams look like. We haven't seen, like a ton. We did see that first practice, some guys kind of back there practicing, taking punts. And in terms of the kick return today, I really liked when Lorenzo Styles, fielded a couple of kicks. They set up, they would kick off to him. They had a bunch of guys back there deep, and I do have my notebook. Hang on. So I've got my notebook here. And
you were, and I will preface this while you're looking that up. You were on the far side of the field where they were catching the balls.
Yes.
I was on the other side where they were kicking. And so I got a terrible view of any kind of catching the ball or anything like that, because they were just loading up guy after guy after like group after group after group, and they were just running through kickoffs, staying in your lane, doing what you need to do. The kickers, placing the ball where they needed to place them, that kind of a thing. From my angle, the kickers look fine. It was kickoff against nothing. So, I mean, they should be fine, but they look fine. There was no problem there. But you can talk more clearly about, the actual receiving of the kickoff. Sure.
So Styles, Lindsey, Meriwether, Pyne, Tyree, Salerno were all back there. Brandon Joseph was back there a little bit. And the two guys who I was most, impressed with, just in terms of how they made a quick read of the blocks and exploded through the hole that they got from the blockers, were Braden Lindsey and Lorenzo Styles. Really impressed with both of them. Now, that's not to say that other guys, didn't do, something well also, but those two were the ones who stood out the most to me. Logan Diggs was also back there with that group, but because of the red jersey, they just had him standing in the end zone, kind of watching. He was looking kind of sad, wishing he could get out there and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But, so they're kind of auditioning a lot of guys back there right now. And Styles was the one who, again, when you talk about exploding through that hole, when you see it, Styles was the one who stood out the most.
Okay. To me. That's cool. I like that. That's very good.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to see. Where else are we so far? Let me see. Kyle asks, how long into fall camp before they start officially practicing game prepping for Ohio State? Has that unofficially already started? Vince?
Well, I would say that because they're working with crowd noise and they're doing some of those different things, I would say that it's already started to a degree. Now, I don't think that they're working, X's and O's and strategy versus what they're going to run against Ohio State. They're still, getting their base in and doing some different things. Yes, they're working on their red zone, and you might see some of the things that they've been working on used against Ohio State. I don't think that that's specific to Ohio State yet, though. I think that, the crowd noise part, yes. The schematic stuff yet, no. That is usually 2 weeks before the season starts. You generally start getting into specific prep, and then obviously the 1 week before you really start getting into it. So, I don't think we're going to see specific Ohio State prep until, let's see. Let me get my little calendar out here.
Like the week of the 22nd, potentially, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be exactly right. That would, and that's going to, of course, we have the full practice, I believe, on the 19th, right? And so we don't get another full practice then after the 19th. Of course, that's when they're going to start doing the Ohio State prep, which is no surprise. So,
all right, a couple quick ones here that I had from Rapid Fire. And if we don't get to your question in the chat tonight, don't worry. You can always, now that training camp has started and we're out there, we won't watch another practice until Thursday, but
that's right.
If you want to shoot us questions, feel free to shoot us questions, like if we need to, and, and we'll take feedback on this. If you want to shoot us your feedback, if you'd like an extra mailbag on this show, something like that Vince and I can do, maybe Wednesdays or something like that, we can do that as well. I mean, we answered a lot of questions tonight as it is, but, more than glad to do that. And, again, it's like now that we finally get to see something, it's fun to get to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. Actually, talk about real football that we've actually seen. It's not all, guessing or not guessing. That's not the right word, but, predicting, that kind of a thing. It's nice to see some actual football. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I saw this on Twitter last week. I sent you the video earlier today. Did you watch the video?
I did not. I did not watch the video. I'm sorry. Okay. I didn't do my homework.
That's okay. You didn't have time. So a female reporter from Detroit, they were doing this. They were on like a little TV show.
Okay.
And the subject came up of people who have weddings in the fall. And the question is, can you remain friends with someone who schedules their wedding in the fall, specifically on a college football Saturday?
I mean, I didn't necessarily plan my wedding around college football, but I did plan my wedding around high school football, so it does kind of correlate a little bit. We obviously, you and I share an anniversary. It was it was yesterday, so all out of the way before the season starts, no problem. I mean, I'm not saying that you stop your friendship with that person, but you may not see me at the wedding.
That's exactly it.
I mean, you and I have ample excuse. Like, I'm sorry, I'm working that day. I mean, there's really nothing I can do.
Yeah.
But
I had to do it, like I ticked off my in-laws a few years back.
Oh, no.
My wife's brother and his wife, got married on a Saturday in October. And it's like, like, do you realize what my paycheck relies on?
Yeah.
It's like, and that's what, like these people were saying, like this, and this was a female reporter who was talking about that, and now I'll just say, now remember, they're in Detroit.
Okay.
She was more a Michigan State fan. So,
Fair
but
enough.
she was still like, if it's Michigan State, you can forget about it, and she was talking about this wedding she went to where it was like Michigan State was playing Iowa and they had this little, glass and they had like chalk that you could write stuff, like they had like something taped to the side of the glass. And she was like writing the, the score and like taking pictures and updating the score. And, she was ticked that she had to be, and someone took a picture of her. She had her phone out, with, watching the game, on her phone and that kind of stuff. And she's like, open bar. So, that made it worth it. But otherwise it's like, the only wedding that I've been to recently was a couple of years. It was in October. They did schedule it during Notre Dame's bye week. So I will give them that. At least they had that.
That's just going to
during Notre Dame's bye week.
in the future for them, when
Yeah.
that anniversary lands on a game day or on a Sunday or whatever. So that's going to be future problems, but the current problem is obviously null and void for all of the guests. And
Yes.
I will also say, when I got married, we had the Cubs game on in the bar area. Like,
See, there's nothing wrong with that.
you can do that kind of a thing without
Yeah.
any problem, right? I mean, that's no big deal.
Right.
So, it is what it is, and you get over it. But
Yeah.
if a buddy of mine had their wedding in the fall and it's on a Saturday and there's a Notre Dame game, I will use the excuse that I got to work all day long.
That's exactly right. Can you remain friends with someone who has their wedding in the fall? I think you can still remain friends. The question is, how mad are they going to get because you don't go to their wedding because they were dumb enough to schedule their wedding on a Saturday in October?
And I guess it gets a little bit more complicated if they ask you to be in the wedding.
Oh, man.
That's where it gets way more complicated. Like, I have no problem being like, yep, can't go. Sorry. I don't care. I'm not a big fan of weddings anyway, so sorry. But yeah, if they ask me to be in the wedding, that's a whole other ball of wax, man. That would be
big
tough.
time difference. Big
Yeah.
time difference right there. All right. Well, we covered a lot of ground tonight. Thanks to all who joined us here live tonight. We had a lot of people watching live. I know, man. A lot of questions rolling. And again, now that training camp's here, and this, it's gonna same goes for the season. You have I think most people who've jumped into the live YouTube chat have not been afraid to ask questions if they want to, or at least make comments and stuff like that. But crank them up now. We'll get to as many as we can over the course of each show.
Absolutely.
That we're on, since we're out there watching practice. And again, so next practice availability is going to be Thursday. We'll have another one Friday, and then no practice Saturday, but we will get to talk to Marcus Freeman Saturday at noon after practice. So we've got 2 short practice viewings this week. My goodness,
there's a lot of short ones. I think there's 10 short ones total. We're only 2 in, so
yeah. And then next week we get a couple. We'll get another. What day is today? Yeah. I've got it's actually my daughter's birthday. I should remember what day today is. August 8th.
Celebrate, buddy.
Of course. But yeah, so we've got a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of stuff coming up in the next week. So I want to make sure. All right. Thank you very much, Matt. Matt just got in. So Matt, you might have to go back to the start of the show and watch or listen at this point. But he said he was having troubles getting in on the live stream. Hopefully that wasn't on our end, but we made it through. Don't forget, hit that like button, rate, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Much appreciated. It helps out the show and the Irish Breakdown platform greatly. Mark, appreciate the compliments. Says, love your show, guys. We appreciate it as always. And Vince, we're mixing up the schedule a little bit. So Vince is going to be back Wednesday.
Yes, sir.
Now, but we'll be back. I'll be back here tomorrow with Jesse, and we've got a lot more that will be rolling your way as well. Some stuff that we didn't get a chance to get to here tonight that we'll get to on tomorrow's show and over the course of the next week as well. So we're just always going to be chock full of football information at this point.
Absolutely. So, happy birthday to Ms. Bailey. Make sure you tell her for me.
Thank you very much. I will do so. Have a great night, and we'll be back tomorrow, 6 o'clock live, and of course on all the podcast platforms right here on IB Nation Sports Talk.